Let's get into it now. So you've brought with you something that everyone can download.
Yeah.
You call it the Careers Vector Framework,
Mm.
and it's designed to help people at the right moment have that conversation and to see whether what you as a technical leader bring matches up with what the expectations of the business are. Before we get into the detail, perhaps you can just explain at a high level what it is and when you think you should be using it, and also what you should do with the output.
Yes. So this came out of a load of different people asking me, how do I get to CTO? And I was like, well, there's different flavors of CTO. And I realized after a while that I was talking through the different flavors as this sort of set of almost like a sliders on a graphic equalizer, different things you could go, hard or soft on, and you could judge. And then I had the sort of, how do I become a CTO? How do I become more senior as a technical leader conversation so many times. I was like, there's something here. There's something interesting here. And so I developed this into a framework that people can use. And I think you can use it in multiple ways. You can use it to self-assess and go, where are my gaps? What do I want to get better at? What do I want my next role to be, and what's the shape of that, and what will I have to improve at in order to get that next role or that next opportunity. I think you can use it with your manager to get expectations really clear and a development plan really clear. And I think you can also use it just for self-knowledge to figure out which types of roles are good for you to do. There are definitely transformational CTOs and people who are not keen on doing the transformation because they want to do the innovation that comes after it's all transformed, right?
Yeah.
And so I think some of it's just about casting yourself well into different roles.
And to what degree is it context sensitive? I mean, you've already mentioned the domain experience, and also you touched on with Monzo, not exactly a lack of technical knowledge on your part, but a difference in what Monzo wanted or where they were with what you had experienced before. So I guess what I'm trying to say is you could look at you could look at your current job and measure yourself and come up with a set of scores, but then look somewhere else and the scores will be very different.
Yes. So I think the thing that stays similar is the shape that you draw. So it's a sort of web diagram.
Yep.
And I think the shape of you will probably stay will grow over time, but stay somewhat consistent. But yeah, the expectations that you're measuring yourself against change very incredibly with context.
Right.
And one of the last vector I added into the equation is industry specific or domain specific knowledge. And I didn't even think of it in the years when I was in e-commerce and similar, because everybody understands how e-commerce works. There's
Right.
some
It's a shop. Yeah.
But it's fundamentally it's a shop, and we've all shopped online. So
Yeah.
we've all got some domain experience just by being consumers. And so it's not a very challenging domain to get to grips with. But then I went to, as I said, Helix and was doing drug discovery. And then, you know what? It matters a lot to understand what preclinical trials are and clinical trials are and how they fit together, and the fact that we can cure lots of things in mice that we can't cure in humans, and all of these kind of things. And so I think it's incredibly contextual. You're right.
Right. Let's get into it. So it's a grid of 6 different dimensions.
Yeah.
And for each one, both the business leader and the technical leader measure themselves from 0 to 5 to indicate, in this context, how strong I am or what the level of expectation is.
Yeah.
And then that, as you say, draws a spider diagram, and you map the expectations over the top of the capabilities.
Yeah.
And then you see the matches, and also, of course, you see the gaps. Let's step through the dimensions one-on-one.
Yeah.
So the first one is hands-on tech. And I guess this is probably for a technical leader one of the easiest to understand, right? I'm an engineer. I'm really good at coding. I know how to build systems. I'm sure most technical leaders will look at that and just go, yeah, I'm a 5. Is that fair?
And I think it depends when the last time you coded was as to whether you're a 5, right? So I wouldn't rate myself as a 5 on hands-on tech anymore. And when I went to Helix, I I'm from an AI background, as I mentioned earlier, and so I was very confident that I could catch up on, the particular AI that they were using, but I hadn't been in that field for a while, and so I was like, I'm a 2 or a 3 here, and
Hmm.
I've got some catching up to do because in this particular business, as CTO, the product of the company is so reliant on in-depth knowledge of AI that I really do need to, brush off my textbooks and read a load of papers and understand the latest in knowledge graphing and these different approaches that they were using. And so I think it's context specific. So, it's not can I code? It's what's needed in this situation to be a great CTO. And that's going to depend on the team. It's going to depend on the industry that you're in. It's going to depend on how much tech is the product of the company and all of those kind of things. I know loads of CTOs who haven't coded in 20 years,
Hmm.
and that doesn't make them shit CTOs.
Right.
Like, not understanding what coding is like these days might, but not having personally been hands on keyboard in a while doesn't necessarily preclude you from being great at the job. And I think that you have to find different ways of keeping current if you're not coding every day.
But
Because
do
so
you
much,
do you do you need to be the strongest technical person in the room? And by strength, I don't necessarily mean the person that understands JavaScript the best, but you're the person that the most senior people in the company will turn to say, "You're the technical person. Give me an answer to this." Do you need to be the best technical person in the company?
I think if you are the best technical person in the company, you've made a massive mistake in hiring, because
Right.
your job is not full-time hands-on keyboard building shit. And so
Right.
if you are the best technical person in the company at hands-on keyboard building shit, and that's not the 90% of your job, then you've made terrible mistakes in hiring. You should be hiring architects and principal engineers and staff engineers who are way better than you. And a
Yeah.
lot of people who end up as CTOs became managers after being, a senior engineer. I
Yeah.
never made it to staff or to principal. I would have loved to. I wish that career path had existed. I think it would have suited me so much better than going into management as early as I did. But I never got there. And so I've had to I wouldn't say I'm only at a senior engineer level in terms of my technical capability. I've found other ways to stay current and to continue to develop in that way. But anywhere where I think I'm the strongest hands-on tech, I think I failed at equipping the company with the right people.
I
Um,
guess you could become a bottleneck, couldn't you, if you were actually? Yeah.
and
So
that's
so
some of that's about the style of CTO role I take. So I take the sort of CTO role, which is quite strategic, it's quite business focused, and it's about leading a large organization. And I think if you're leading a large organization and you're managing and leading a large organization, you have to spend quite a lot of time on that. And so if you don't, but if you're an architect style CTO, then maybe you are one of the strongest. And so I think, I'm not dissing anybody out there who is a CTO who is thinks that they are incredibly strong hands-on tech wise. But I think that you have to go, how much of my job is doing this, and am I spending the right amount of time on each of these different elements of my job?
yeah. And I guess that if you're a founding CTO type person, you kind of are the most senior technical
Yes.
person. So how would a technical person evaluate themselves against this metric? I mean, I'm sure that in your head, the big thing is to go, I can't say I'm a 2 technically. So how do you evaluate that and come up with a reasonable score?
I This whole thing is judgment. And it's one of the things that engineers in particular find most uncomfortable about this framework is it's a self-assessment and a judgment call. There isn't a hard and fast way of going, a 2 means exactly this, and this is how you articulate it, and this is how you pin yourself to a score. It's really going, how confident am I in being able to do what's needed of me?
Yeah.
And it,
And
and
getting the best out of the team, I guess, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, so the first part's hands-on tech, and that's, literally, could you go back to being a staff engineer in the team, in one of your teams today, is one way to evaluate that. The other way to evaluate that is like, do you understand enough that when your team are having an architectural argument, you can contribute? And I
Yeah.
think which of those it is is very dependent on which stage of company you're at and all the context, as we said earlier.
And that leads us on very nicely to the second dimension, which is technical strategy.